right, now for something a little bit different. We're going to talk about census data a little bit more this week. And instead of me going on and on about it, I've brought a guest speaker. So that might be a little bit more interesting for once. And our guest speaker today is Michael Webster, who up until December of 2023, so just the end of last year, was the main GIS analyst for the City of San Francisco's planning department, which has a lot of different departments and offices and subgroups, and he knows all the nuances and ins and outs of that way better than me. But I thought he, as the point person for the City of San Francisco's census data program, would be a good person to give us a little insight. But maybe, Michael, we'll start with kind of a day in the life of a GIS analyst and cartographer, maybe more interestingly, at the planning department. What was a day in the life like?
Well, I was in a tiny little group of analysts, and all of us, and I was really the only main GIS person. Everybody used GIS and dabbled in GIS, but I was in GIS, all 8 hours of the day.
You mean that means they all had ArcGIS Pro on their work
Right.
computer, and whether they used it or not was individual choice. Yeah.
Right. Since we were a data group, lots of people just used data tools, like, whatever they used. Actually, I'm a GIS person, so I'm not exactly sure what they used, but they used all kinds of different software to parse through tables and data. I use GIS because I'm a geographer and I care about geospatial data. So I had a couple of long-term projects, like things that I updated quarterly that were always things that I was always doing. So like the zoning map and the height districts map, those had to be kept up because they're constantly changing. And those were it was a cartographic job, which was one of my favorite things to do. So every quarter I would basically pull out the big map and look at all the changes that had happened over the quarter and make those changes. And sometimes there were tiny little changes, and sometimes there were gigantic changes that took like the whole month to fix on the map. And,
I just took a moment to go pull up said map and open it. I think either someone in this class or the 110 class found it as an example of nominal data, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And so, Michael, go ahead and talk about this.
That's interesting. This is a different. So the date on this map is really old. So this is not the latest and greatest.
It says 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely upgrade. I worked at the department through last year, so 2023. So the latest should have 2023 on it. So the way you usually find these maps is you go to the planning department's website and you type in zoning map. If you do Google or something, it might pull up something like this one of your old maps because there's a ton of them. I updated it every quarter, so there's a PDF for every quarter, and that's a way that you're able to do. When people say, "Do you have a map from what did zoning look like back in 2018 or something?" You can pull up the map and show them.
I just want to show how tiny these labels are for fun.
You like the glow effect on the
effect, yes.
On the piers? Isn't that nice?
Yes. Glowing piers.
So back to a day in a life. So, at any given day, I may be working on this map or the other map that are my long-term. And not only this map, but like you have to update what they call the parcel information manager, which is the online.
Is this a typo, my friend? Where? Pier 39? Excuse me?
It's spelled wrong.
Okay, moving on.
It is a typo.
Okay, sorry.
Wow, good job.
I can't help it. Okay.
Wow.
Sorry.
So anyway, maybe the new person changed it. No, that was 2020. That was definitely me. So I'll be working on one of these projects at any given time, this ongoing stuff. And then, typically what happens is I've got 2 or 3 shorter term projects. And a shorter term project at the planning department can mean that it's a 12-month long project. It doesn't necessarily have to be a daily thing. Like they're trying, as I was leaving, they were trying to rezone the west side of west side of the city, and that's still going on because it's very controversial. But it was something that I worked on every single day. My last, 6 months of work. Well, actually, probably my last year of work. It's still going. If I was there, I'd still be working on it probably because my replacement is now working on it. Um, uh, so I would, and a lot of that was data table work. It wasn't really necessarily mapping. We were modeling how much housing we could get out of this area of geography if we changed the zoning to 3 units instead of 4 units, or stuff like that, or if we raised the heights from 65 to 85, and how much more housing could we get if we did that. And that's just like simple math. Like if you think of a building, there's FAR, and which stands for floor area ratio. You can figure out, like, if you zone this lot for a 65 unit building, you can get 6 units out of it, but it's already got a 35-foot building on it, so you subtract 3 because you want the net. It's a whole thing, and then you add them all up, and then you give it to the planner, and they're happy to get it. But a lot of times there were emergencies, like there's a shadow ordinance happening on a park, and we've kind of sat on it for a while, and we need to know the true dimensions of the park. So can you sit down with us? And even though the parks are all mapped, it doesn't necessarily mean that the boundary of the park is suitable for the shadow ordinance, because there's a law that says if you build anything over 40 foot, it can't cast a shadow on the park unless the Park and Rec department approve it, and they generally don't unless the community supports it. So what will happen is they'll say, like, zoom into any given park on that map, like Corona Heights or something like that. So Corona Heights is a little ambiguous down there by the museum, the Randall Museum with the animals and stuff in it. You don't know exactly where it is. So what we would do is we'd pull up our shapefile, or our feature class actually, of Corona Heights Park. I think that one down below is called State Street Playground. Yeah. So there's 2 right there, but for the shadow ordinance, it really doesn't matter that there's 2. It's just it's rec and park area. And I'd sit down with the planner with the photo behind it, and we would basically draw new lines. I think you guys went over editing.
When you used an air photo, was it the one from Esri Streaming that you can use, or did you have your own?
No, we have our own.
Okay.
We have our own in-house
So you
that
would,
gets updated every year.
in ArcGIS Pro, you would navigate to add data, and you'd browse and go find your own image layer. Yeah.
Yeah, and typically because those are so big, our pixels were 3-inch pixels, which means that each pixel on the ground represented 3 inches on the earth. So there were a lot of pixels, and it was very high def. And you had to kind of keep those on your local drive, like on your C drive. You didn't want to pull that kind of data over a network. You did it right on your computer. And they were like, the files were gigabytes. So, but we basically draw a new line here for the shadow ordinance, and they would use that to test the models. There was special software that drew shadows on any given size of a building. Like if you had a building, like if you wanted to build a building like in the corner of Flint Street, I never heard of Flint Street and 16th or something. Say you wanted to build like an 80-foot building on the corner there. You could put it through this other software. There's another GIS person over at the department who wrote the software that would draw what was called a shadow fan, and it would tell you how much shadow would be on the park. Or no, it wouldn't tell you how much. It would tell you if a shadow would fall on the park from any given building, and then we would typically have consultants do the analysis about, like, how much shadow would be in September, how much shadow would be in the summer, how much shadow it changes all year round. So that would be like maybe an emergency thing, just because somebody forgot to do the shadow study or something. I mean, this is all hypothetical stuff, but like everybody had something new every day, which required either some sort of measurement or some sort of quick map so they could explain something to somebody else. And you end up making a lot of maps with the person who wants the maps in your cube or in your office telling you what they want the map to look like. So when you learn about classification and choropleth mapping and all that kind of stuff, you can make a map and symbolize it how you think looks great. And if you send it to the person who asked for the map and they're like, this is completely wrong. I'm like, well, actually, it's not wrong. It's just not showing what you want it to show. Why don't you come over to my cube and we'll try to tweak the classification so it looks like what you need it to look like, or what you anticipated to look like, or what you had anticipated that it would look like. I want to make you happy. I'm making the map, but I'm not really in charge of classifying your data. I can give you a heads. I would always use a default of what was it?
Natural breaks?
Not natural breaks. I would use something more quantified. I would use quantiles, and I would start with 5 quantiles, and then we would work from that point to wherever the person might do. And often it's just going through the different classifications. Like, okay, here's natural breaks. What's this look like? Like the way this one looks? I'm like, well, maybe it looks a little better, but the mission needs to be a little lighter. The mission, or sunset shouldn't be so light there. It should be, depending on what the classification is.
So that leads me to my next question, which is like, you're talking about a couple of skills there. I heard digitizing, I heard making a choropleth map, I heard some about cartography, and I just, in a nutshell, if you can summarize, when you first got your job, let's say at the planning department, how much of the skills did you find you already had in your pocket from learning GIS, and then how much did you have to sort of figure out as you were on the job?
Well, it's interesting. I was able to get an internship with a now defunct company out in Walnut Creek where I digitized all day. And I think a lot of new GIS people will get stuck into a digitizing job, which isn't a bad thing because you really learn how the software works when you digitize all day. And actually, I always found digitizing a lot of fun. It's almost like a video game, I put some music in my earbuds and digitize and move labels around all day or whatever we were doing. Kind of fun. But so in order to get that internship, they gave me a little test and they said, make me a map. And there was a map of, I think it was a world map that they wanted reprojected and then made into a map. And so I was prepared to do that because I had been through a lot of courses at San Francisco State. So I knew exactly what I was doing. They gave me the data. They just said, make this world map, put it in this projection, and show me the map. And they just wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing, that I wasn't faking them out.
I know this is a long time ago. Do you remember, did they give you the projection to use, or did they tell you to pick one that was appropriate for the world map? I'm just...
I don't know. That's actually a good question. But I think they gave me the projection. It was either unprojected data and they wanted me to project it as, because that was part of the digitizing job because we were getting data from all over the world. So they wanted to make sure that I understood projections and how to change projection of anything. So that was kind of important for that gig. And I got that gig. And then I went to the city after like 6 months of that. And that was it was a paid internship. It wasn't too bad. And then I went to the city as an intern as well and worked for the Department of Public Works for a little while. So I felt like I had a pretty good grasp on things because I had taken so much coursework. But as a GIS person, this is what it makes you, as a GIS person, people expect you to know so much stuff that it's impossible to know. So they'll expect you to know Python. Well, maybe I don't know Python. I make maps. I don't write Python scripts. Or maybe they think you're a real whiz bang at SQL. Like, oh, I know a little bit of SQL, but I'm not going to write like massive scripts that'll pull data out of databases. Maybe they like you show them a little 3D stuff that you did in ArcGIS Pro here. They'll expect you to know like everything there is to know about 3D, which is, impossible. It's like, that's like, Hollywood stuff, Um,
Or
you base,
depending on the size of the organization, they might be like, "Oh, could you also fix the printer and like my Windows software isn't working. Can you troubleshoot the,
oh,
you know,
yeah, the GIS person is often the person who takes care of the plotter.
yeah, the plotter.
Like
Yeah,
they're the one that knows how to change the plotter paper, and
yeah,
if the plotter goes down, like, where's Mike? I can't plot anything out because you're the guy or person, I should say, who works, who uses the plotter for the most part, and so they kind of think that you're the master of the plotter, and you're like, I'm not the master of the plotter. Let's IT call, please. I'll call IT. I don't want anything to do with the plotter. I plot out just like you do.
right.
And they
So
think you're an expert at it.
so good. So kind of it seems like in general you knew some basics maybe from basic classes, but there's no way to prepare with every single tool that you're ever going to need in a GIS job. I think that's a great takeaway. So this last week, this class went to the census.gov website, and there's a very hard to find page on that website, which actually I have to say, I think I got that link originally from you, Michael, like 5 years ago or more, where you're like, oh, here's a page. And I've saved that link ever since. And now I'm proud to share it with the students as a page where you are joining tables, but it's a little bit easier than going and finding raw tables and cleaning them up. So that's what they did last week. This week they're gonna make a map with the data. But can you talk about a little bit what ACS is versus the census? Everyone thinks of the census, but ACS is really generally the data that you use as an analyst, right?
Typically, yes, because the census is every 10 years. The ACS is every year. So the ACS is a survey, and the Decennial Census is a count. So every year, the Census Department will do a survey of I think it's like 3-ish million people a year sprinkled throughout the United States. It's not that much, but they use that data to come up with data for counties, tracts, and block groups, and other bigger geographies like states and things like that. It's one of the things that's weird about the Decennial. I mean, I'm sorry about the ACS, the American. I mean, Decennial. I think I don't need to go too much into it. It's basically a count of the people and their race and ethnicity and their age and their gender, and that's kind of it. The ACS is the form that asks you all the other questions that you can get from the, like, how much money do you make, and what's your income and all that kind of stuff, and everybody wants to map that kind of data.
So the ACS has more attributes than the decennial.
Way more. The Decennial's got a handful of attributes. The ACS has a boatload of attributes. So one of the things that's weird about the ACS is there's two sets. There's a 5-year ACS and a 1-year ACS. They both come out every year, but the 5-year ACS is a 5-year window. So, and they use those 5 survey dates to come up with a data set that is more accurate than if you were just to pull 1 year and try to figure it out from. So it's a survey, but it's really a survey. If you get the 5-year data set, it's 5 surveys that they do, and they make that into one data set for the year. So when they say, look at bullet number 4 here, where it says the release in December 2024 will be the 2019 through 2013 5-year ACS survey data.
Okay.
That's 5 years, but they'll shorten the name of it to just the 2023 or 5-year data.
Okay.
And that window moves as you go. And that's for if you want to map tracts and block groups, which is if you're working for a jurisdiction the size of San Francisco, that's what you want. If you work for the state, maybe you don't want it so much. If you work for the country, maybe you don't want it so much. Maybe you want counties. If you want counties, excuse me, if you want counties or something like that, you could go to the 1-year data set, which is exactly what they do take the that big survey and give you a data set that's just for that. But they don't get into the smaller geographies with the 5 year.
Okay. So you also give me these talking points around how to use the data, and so go ahead and
Okay,
talk about those.
so every in the past every year, it was great for a GIS analyst because they would release a geodatabase of all the ACS data, and it's typically there's 100 of these geodatabases, two for every state, and the two are blocks. One is blocks and one is block groups. And these are really easy to work with. I mean, they're huge and they take a lot of time, but and like for California, it's really big. It has 58 counties.
You
So
mean
all 58 counties.
one is block groups and one is tracts, I think. You just
Oh,
said
right. I misspeak.
yeah. So block
Yeah, it's
groups
block
and
and
tracts.
tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so and then you kind of pull your county out of it, which is not an insignificant amount of work, but it's still all there for you. You don't have to go to their arcane website and try to pull this stuff. And yeah, number two, creating spatial data from the raw tables is a non-trivial task. I think, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. It's a real mess.
And
It's
the
hard.
way quickly the toughness of it is that they don't come, and this is just from me remembering, they don't come to you. So here is here's an example of the attributes, and they don't come to you even with columns and rows. They come, and this is just from remembering, they come on these sheets that have headers and then just like multiple headers. So even to get the census number, so this is it. This is the meat of it. This is like the numbers. The attributes are cryptic. We have to make them readable. The GeoIDs are the code, but the numbers themselves you have to do all this processing just to make it rows and columns, and so that's why I think the takeaway is any time that the census has done that for you, or anyone has done that for you, like in the case of that site, that one page that we
Yeah.
went to, it's worth starting there and seeing if your theme is there. And then
Right,
and
because yeah,
yeah,
it's
and
tough.
if it's not, then you have to do that work that these students haven't even seen. I just have PTSD from having to do it, where you might have to find yourself going to a sheet and then having to make it into a table even. So
Yeah. It's hard, I don't understand why they do it that way, but they make it really difficult for
yeah.
you. It's the federal government. They have the reasons, I suppose. Um,
Do you have an
the
opinion? Do you have opinion on Esri's streaming data sets, which I want to, while you're talking, I'll show them real quick.
I used them in the past for exactly that reason. If so, that geodatabase comes out. So the track and block group data comes out in December every year. The 5 year data comes out every December. In the past, this geodatabase has come out in the summer in June, but sometimes it doesn't come out for a while, and I'm not even sure if they're continuing to make it. So it's if you can find what you need using Esri's CAM stuff, use it because it's tough to pull together these things. It's not impossible, but I had like 3 sheets of notes on how to do it, and I had to relearn it every time I had to do it. So, like I said, it's not impossible, and I couldn't teach anybody how to do it unless we sat down at the computer and we had like 3 days to go over
Right.
it. It's just ridiculous.
And so just to show, I just wanted to add one. I picked employment status. So what it looks like when one opts to use this. So what I did is I opened Art Catalog. Usually we are in Art Catalog under this choice right here, which is project, and we're looking at our own hard drive. What I did is clicked over to portal, which means Esri's online stuff, and you can see that it's a big mishmash of things of variable use. So, and
You
over
really
here
have
I
to use
clicked
the
onto
search.
Living Atlas, and it's a real, a bit of a minefield. But if you use good search terms in here, like I did, I said ACS census, and just hit enter. I have now just filtered it for myself, and the key thing to look for in here is, I would say, the owner, and don't pick anything that doesn't look doesn't look like it has a Esri as an owner or somebody legit. So I added employment, and so you can see this is the work that they've done. They have, and it's of, it's up to you as the analyst to say, wait, they've already symbolized it. They've joined it, which is great, but then they've symbolized it, and then you have to think through for your use, have they symbolized the way that I want, what I want? And you're going to 9 times out of 10 have to redo some things, but check out the readable attribute
Right.
header. So this is the value add. So this is the, and I you might be mad at me right now because I made you I made you figure, I gave you the steps on how to do this yourself, but I didn't want you to feel like you weren't equipped to, be on your own if you had to be. I don't want you to use this as a crutch. I want you to have both skills. Yes, go find it on here, but also be able to have a PDF where you can make this stuff work for you. And that makes you just that much more valuable in the workforce. And you don't have to lean on this kind of thing. But
Plus, the Esri data isn't available for block groups. So if you want to get smaller than a tract, you can't use the Esri data.
okay, maybe hold that thought about block groups, because I want to just, yeah. So back to here, the 5-year releases are for tract and block group. And then if you want county or larger, and then there's these 1-year releases, so you need to find those. But let's talk a little bit about this geography. So we've been throwing around some terms. We've got tract, block group, and block. And this is actually your graphic, which I think is fantastic. The number in the middle is the GeoID. And then, so talk about how the GeoID works to these geographies.
Yeah, this is often referred to as a FIPS code, FIPS, and I have no idea what it stands for. I'm sure the F stands for federal, but it's just a number that if you know how to parse it, you can figure out where you are. So, and it goes from larger to smaller. So the biggest container bucket is states. There's 50 states, and then the next one is county. So you hack off California, and then you have county. There's 58 counties in California. You hack off San Francisco, and then you've got your census tracts. Census tracts do change every 10 years, so that the amount of them change, but so that number could change.
So, real quick, importantly, over time, if you're comparing one 10-year census to another 10-year census, and you are hoping to see change in a city over time, get uh, you might get thrown
That's why it's
off.
helpful to map. Yeah, that's why it's helpful to make a map instead of comparing tables.
Yeah.
If you're looking, because you can't go 10 year to 10 year compare census tract to census tract. I mean, you can for 90% of them, but many tracts get split and many tracts get merged depending on if people move into the tract or people move out of the tract. And if you think of a place like Mission Bay, where there's nobody lived there in the 80s, and now a lot of people live there now, you're gonna have a bunch of changes. So Mission Bay is a little bit higher there. So I think it's 2 now. It used to be 1, and it might be even more. And I'm sure one of the tracks look
So
like?
this is blocks. This is block groups in pink, and then tracts is dark black. So, and let me change
Yeah.
the base map.
What year is that track from? Do you know? Is it from 2020 or
Uh,
2010?
this is from 2020. These tracks are from ACS 2020, whatever their most recent ACS is, which is 2021. or something.
These might be the old tracks. I'm not
Could
sure.
be.
I used to be able to just look at them and know that's, but no, I don't know that anymore.
But
But yeah, just
right now, in this data, Mission Bay is one tract. Are you saying it got split?
yeah, I think it did get split.
Okay.
Um, no, yeah, that's right. I think it got split actually. So that if you that the track that's right above to the left or
This
to the
one?
east, that one, that's Mission Bay too. I mean, that little hump on it isn't, but everything under that hump that is considered Mission Bay. I think there's some big apartment buildings there, and that's why that used to be part of the bigger polygon, and that's where the split was.
Oh, this got split off.
Yeah, that got cleaved off because of apartment buildings,
Right.
and they'll probably get split again in 2030. I bet.
Yeah.
Um,
So
yeah. So
where we were at is
oh, it was
right to here. Then
track.
block group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And typically a block group, everything nests. So a block group, a track can be split into not split into two or three or four block groups, and they basically just append a 1, 2, 3, or 4 to the census tract number, and then blocks are underneath that. And it's rare to get data for blocks. You can't get a lot of data for blocks. Everybody wants data for blocks but because of privacy reasons, they don't really release a lot of data for blocks. They do release counts for blocks because of because they have numbers, but I don't even know if they release ethnicity for blocks. I think it's just counts. Maybe gender. Like, what data do you have on those blocks? Like, what's in the attribute table?
Oops. The way it was explained, I have this is coming from Esri, so they have.
Oh, I see.
They don't have any. But
there's no data attached to it.
The way it was explained to me is that if blocks are so small that if you only had one dwelling in it and you had some census data on that block, then you could easily, apply it to
you
the
can
person. You could get down to the
you can find people.
level.
You can find people with it.
Yeah.
So they don't typically they'll give you a big number like 8. They can say 18 people live here, but that's kind of all that they're going to give you.
So
so that's the block. Yeah.
And I want to show the number in. Here's a GeoID that I wanted to show, and this is where I know this is small and hard to read, but I think we may not be sure what 14000 US is, but you can see it starts with.
I don't know what that is.
What it starts with 06001. So this is a nationwide table or a California-wide table. I can't remember. But if we went,
it's probably California.
Probably California. So if we
06.
if we know that California is 06 and San Francisco is 075, if we have something massive like this, it's possible to do. And I've already staged a select by attributes here where GeoID contains 06075, which is what I know from this, and you can say apply, and that's how you can get the 244 records that just apply to San Francisco. And that's the importance of knowing the format of this code, is that you can reverse engineer it and then find yourself where you find the data that you need.
It's a great system. It works great for a unique identifier. There's none of the numbers are the same, so you can join and do all kinds of work with that. But you can also find whatever you're looking for pretty quick. If you're looking for, all of California in a countrywide data set, you can just look for the 06.
Right.
If you're,
Cool. So maybe to start to wrap up, you gave me the names of some very boring looking programs and things, but I'm sure it was, there's the parts of everyone's job that are sort of in the weeds, but just at a high level, describe all this work that you got paid to do for San Francisco.
So I was there for 2 censuses. I was there for the 2010 census and the 2020 census. So I got to do these twice. But there's basically three big programs that they throw at the local jurisdictions to update. The census wants the best data they can get. So the first thing they do is they ask you if any tracts need to be split or if any tracts need to be merged, and they basically give you the data and you propose splits and mergers based on population counts, and they say yes or no. Like they have they're the deciders, but pretty much everything that we suggested they went through. So I think I don't know. We probably added a 20 new track to 20 new tracks, 5 new tracks, 5 to 20 new tracks. I don't really remember for 2020.
So, so
And
is it you as the GIS guy, or is it you and your department, your
it's
team?
me and my department. Yeah, I didn't make any of those decisions. I supplied the numbers, but I didn't make the decisions on where to.
And how'd you get
If
the
you look at,
population
well, I'll
data?
show you. I can actually tell that this is the 2020 tracks because look where the bridge meets San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
See that tiny little
This
one right
one?
there? Yeah. So this was like one of these tracks was like a track. One track gets split into 6 different tracks. So if you found the older track sheet, you would see that. Um, um, but yeah, so that little block became a new tract, and then the one below it became a tract. And what they do is they don't rename, like a tract will get retired, like a number will get retired, and a new number will be assigned to it. So when you do joins, they won't actually join to run geographies, but um, yeah. So that's one of the programs is where do we need to split and where do we need to merge. Another program, and this isn't so much San Francisco, but think of all the cities in the United States, is, you know, cities will annex and change their boundaries all the time. They'll annex other land or they'll change their boundaries. Think like in our like what if San Francisco annexed Brisbane because of supposedly a new thing going on down there, new housing. Like if San Francisco annexed it, we would have to report it for this program. But I generally skip this program because San Francisco doesn't change like its boundaries and it doesn't annex anything. But like, lots and lots and lots of cities where it happens. The big one though is this last one, Luca, which basically the federal government sends you their address list and you sign a bunch of non-disclosure and agrees that you will destroy the data when you're finished, but you compare your address list with the census's address list, and
Wow.
anywhere you have new addresses, you put them in the list and you submit them. And it sounds kind of daunting, and it kind of is, but now San Francisco has a master address database. It used to have like 6 of them because we had 6 different departments to keep track of addresses, but now we've got one, so it's pretty quick work. And what's kind of fun about it is it's one of the few times that we did field work because there's a date, and they want to know how many units are going to be where on this date and what their addresses are going to be. So we would drive around and look at construction sites and try to triangulate how many units, we had that data with us, what the addresses were going to be. And so we drive around and do windshield surveys of construction sites and new developments, which was kind of fun. So that made the Luca kind of a fun thing. One more note on those 3 programs
Yeah.
is you don't use ArcGIS to do it. They send a package called QGIS to you and the data, and you do the work in there. And so it's a self-directed like program. It's made so if you're not a GIS person, you could do it. Though being a GIS person makes it a lot easier. And of course, you can pull the data out and put it in ArcGIS to make it a little easier for you. But it's made as a standalone kind of app, but it's based on QGIS.
And I reckon that these individual polygons are adjacent to their neighbors, and part of the digitizing or the splitting of them required that you had topological rules so that there weren't slivers and overlaps and things like that, right?
Yeah, sure.
Good answer. That was the right answer. Okay. You left a couple of things I put under tips and tricks, and one of this first one is about clipping, which I am chuckling as I look at the motley things I have here. And these are even from Esri. It looks like even Esri's copies of them, they do some different things. They handle clipping and
Yeah,
such in different ways. And like,
right.
I always laugh when I see these peers or
Yeah,
or uh, or not. But especially for San Francisco, because the legal tract or the and all of my classes have wrestled with this forever is that the legal track goes out into the ocean because of
right.
islands and rocks in the bay and things like that. So talk about cartography.
Well, I would just clip these tracks to the landmass. You find a shoreline data set and clip it and not worry too much about it.
And that's
This
from
does bring up a,
that's from Data
yeah.
SF. That's where you download it from Shoreline
I
from
think there's probably a shoreline on data SF.
yeah,
I'm not really sure.
I think there is.
I had one since I started working there, and it was always there. I mean, somebody's obviously clipped whatever the block groups to the shoreline,
Right.
because it follows the shoreline. Um, it is interesting though that San Francisco County includes some of Alameda County.
Right. Right.
If you turn on the tracks again and you look at
Yeah.
Alameda
This little
Island,
guy.
it's in the boundary existed before the land did because that's fill. So that is essentially in San Francisco County, even though it really isn't. Same with a little sliver of Angel Island and Red Rock Island up there at that point. Um, but yeah, that's got nothing to do with the census.
So here's that little
Yeah, see,
split.
yeah, yeah.
So
And this is not, and whatever this green one is, this is not the shoreline you clip to.
no, this is
It's not good. I don't know where you got that. Is that census?
this is Esri. So this is Esri's county level
For
geography
the whole for the whole
for the
country,
whole
probably.
U.S. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So San Francisco's special. It's tiny. It's so small. It's probably one of the smallest counties in the entire United States, size-wise. So you kind of guys treat it special, cartographically. What were some of the other tips and tricks?
You were talking about that the privacy and anonymity. We touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, that's something you should just read about. I couldn't explain it to you, but that's definitely something you should understand. Not you don't have to understand it implicitly, but you do need to know that there's things going on behind the curtain that try to keep the data a little more private than it has been in the past.
Do you know if it means they're changing the numbers actually a little bit?
Yes,
Yikes.
yes, that's what that means. Yeah,
Good to know. But a lot of that is what I really appreciate that is you have a great insight into not only using this data, but then how to explain it to other people. Because as your job as a GIS analyst is to help people get the answers. I mean, a lot of times you're getting the answers that you want, but just as often you're helping other people, and so explaining it and explaining the pros and cons and limitations is always part of so maybe diplomacy is another one of those skills that GIS analysts need, along with changing plotter paper. We have to kind of
oh, right.
do
Yeah.
all
You
that.
have to realize that, I mean, one of the things you think, like as a cartographer or a mapper, you rarely make maps for yourself. I mean, especially when somebody's paying you, you're making maps for other people and they have ideas about how that map should look. And you should be completely deferential with them because they're writing the check. You can say you can't lie, you know, but you can make it look like the way that they need it to look like by still adhering to like real regular classification schemas and things like that, and making your legend truthful, but you're still making a map for somebody else. in all cases, kind of, if you've got a job, unless you're your own person and you like to just put your maps on your walls.
Cool. Well, that's great. I wanted to. So the last slide I have here is just between things you've given me, and we've put together some resources. These are just good links to have. And then last here, I have like ways to search this living atlas over here, where my mouse is, living atlas, to find things in there and have a great time. So thank you, Michael, for joining us. That was really useful, and I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.